Hi, my name's Emily and I just filmed this entire video without actually pressing record, so let's try this again. Today I'm going to be doing my top 6 worst books of 2019. So let me just say that I don't care if you guys like these books, like that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that they're inherently bad. This is my opinion. I just didn't like them for the various reasons I'm about to tell you. So let's jump into it. Number 6 on my list is Hidden Figures by Margot Shutterly. And I want to preface this by saying, like, I don't think that these women's story is not important, because it is. It's crucial to allowing us to get to space and crucial for the history and the future of women in STEAM programs and for Black women and people of color across the board. So I understand the validity, and I know that this story is very important. I just have a problem with the book itself. And the problem is that this book is written in a way that's very bland, and I found it very boring. I listened to the audiobook because I tried to read this physically a couple years ago and could not get past like 20 pages. And I have an issue with it being repetitive and just having such like minute details about the lives of these women's like outside of their work for this, like talking about their children moving around and things like that. Like I just didn't care. And I think that I would enjoy this more in the movie format. I think I would like the movie, but it was written in a way that was very math and science heavy. I'm not a person who is very, I don't want to say interested, but like I just don't click with math and science as much as I do with like language arts and history and things like that. And I know this is a historical story, but the language and the terminology, it uses a lot of slang that's specific to math and science. So it bored me a little bit. And I just did not like the writing style. I listened to the audiobook, like I said, and it wasn't enjoyable either. So I just didn't have a good time listening to this story. But I think I would really enjoy the movie. And I don't know if this was like a movie first and then they wrote the book adaptation of the story, or if vice versa. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for this one. Like, this is not a bad book, but I did not enjoy it. And I just like, it's not on my disappointing reads because like I didn't have any expectations of it, and like I have no, like, there's no joy in this story. Like I did not enjoy my experience with this. So do with that information what you will. Number 5 on my list is The Last Magician by Maxwell, and this story is about a girl who is able to time travel, and she has to go back to, I think it's like 1902, in order to prevent people from destroying the source of magic for this world. And the concept is really, really interesting. Like, I think it could have been a really good book for me, but I think part of the issue is that I kept comparing it to the Six of Crows duology, which I had just read like a month or two prior to reading The Last Magician, and I just liked the Six of Crows duologies more. And like, they're not that similar. There are a lot of similarities, but I recognize like they're completely different stories. But you know, it is a heist, and there's like abilities, and the Six of Crows has like some with like the Grisha, you know, magic and stuff like that, but this is a lot more magic based in The Last Magician. But anyways, I found that I just like wasn't invested in the story at all. It took me forever to read it. It was so slow in my opinion. And I usually really, really like a slow burn book, especially if it's character driven and not plot driven. And I think that's also a reason why I liked the Six of Crows duology better, is that it was more character driven versus plot. And I feel like The Last Magician was heavily reliant on the plot. And then speaking of plot, like, I didn't find any of the twists surprising. Like, I found that the book was very predictable. So I won't be continuing on with the series. I just have no interest, and I have already like gotten rid of my copy and passed it on to a friend who I think will like it better than me. And I know a lot of people really love this book, and I'm sad that I didn't, but it is what it is, I guess. Number 4 is The Downside of Being Charlie by Torres Sanchez, and this is about Charlie who goes to fat camp over the summer, and when he comes back, his mom has left him and his dad, and it's not the first time that she's left, but she's gone for a really long time this time, and he finds out that his dad is having an affair, and it kind of just deals with Charlie's struggles of dealing with his weight and his parent issues, and like also wanting to start a relationship with the cute neighbor girl that just moved in. And the problem that I had with this is that the discussion of weight and weight loss and mental health were all done really poorly, in my opinion. Charlie struggles with like not wanting to go to fat camp, but also not wanting to be fat, and like he like makes himself throw up a lot, and this is all like in order, like he's trying to do these things in order to impress this girl, and basically it's just kind of like, you know, that thing where people assume like you have to be skinny in order to be attractive, and it's just like a really bad like fat phobic. I felt that the book was fat phobic, and it just wasn't handled very well. And like mental health was not handled very well either, and I just feel like it perpetuated a lot of bad ideas, and so it was just a negative reading experience all around, and I would not recommend it. Number 3 on my list is Weetzie Bat by Francesca Block, and this is honestly one of the weirdest books I've ever read in my entire life. It's about a girl named Weetzie Bat, and she and her best friend Dirk get 3 wishes from a genie in this like fantastical Los Angeles setting, and because of the way that they word their wishes, they come true but in really bizarre ways. And so they wish for like a house that the 2 of them can live in, boyfriends for each of them, and then like one other thing, but I can't remember what it is. So like they get the house that Dirk's grandma died in or something like that, like some weird occurrence, you know, and they do get the house, but like it had to be in a roundabout way. And the reason that this book is bad is absolutely bizarre, which is not inherently bad, but like there's just some concepts that are not handled well. It's very problematic in my opinion. This book, it was written in 1989, and so it just doesn't stand the test of time. But from what I understand from Goodreads, it was supposed to be pretty progressive for its time. Like, is talking about alternative relationships, and it discusses AIDS and things like that that were taboo before the internet was really popular and things like that. Like, so it, the problematic parts are, one, the main character Weetzie has her boyfriend, and then her best friend Dirk has his boyfriend, and Weetzie wants a baby, if I'm remembering correctly, and her boyfriend doesn't want one, so she has a threesome with her best friend and his boyfriend, and gets pregnant and has a baby, but it makes her boyfriend jealous, so then he goes and gets another woman pregnant, and then it's like the woman he gets pregnant is a witch, and then they have this baby that they call witch baby, and they like treat it really badly. Like they call it witch baby, and I think there's like conversations about the color of the baby's skin, and they just like, there's another child in the book and they treat it like it's a precious angel sent from God, and then the witch baby they like treat awfully and don't want anything to do with it, and it's just like, it was not good. And then also, and so like the cheating and whatever, I didn't like that, and maybe it was like a polyamorous situation, and I just like I don't know. I don't remember all of the weird things that happened, but there were a lot of them, and I just thought it was problematic. It was really, really short. It was like a 2-hour audiobook, and I was literally just like listening and like constantly being like, what is happening? Like, it was a time. It was a rough time. I won't do it again. Wouldn't recommend you do it. Case closed. Number 2 on this list is 17 and Gone by Nova Ren Suma, and this book is about a girl who is seeing the ghosts of girls who have gone missing, like in her area and surrounding areas, and she thinks that she has to intervene, solve their cases, figure out what happened so that they can like finally rest. And this is going to be a big spoiler for the book, so if you want to read this book, like, skip ahead to the next book. But I really like ghost stories and paranormal stories, so this book, you know, from what it was pitched as, I thought it was going to be really great. But in the last, like, 50 to 75 pages, there's this plot twist that the main character is actually experiencing symptoms of early onset schizophrenia. And I just absolutely hate that they used a mental illness as a plot device, as a plot twist. The author does include resources in the back to like the Mental Health Alliance and like I think maybe the Trevor Project and things like that. But just like, it just rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like that idea that like it was pitched as a paranormal book and then it ended up being that the main character was experiencing schizophrenia symptoms. So it was just not a good representation for mental health, and I don't recommend anybody reads it. And the number 1 worst thing that I read this year, I can't even consider it a book because it was like a 30-page novella, like short story thing, was Last Day of Love by Lauren Kate, which is a prequel short story to the Teardrop duology. Teardrop is the first one, Waterfall is the second one, and this duology is actually pretty good, but this short story novella should not have existed. This series is about a girl named Eureka, and if she cries, her tears will flood the earth. And she meets this boy named Ander, who is a seed bearer, which is kind of like this group of people who has these powers over the elements, and he's supposed to kill her so that she doesn't flood the earth, if I remember correctly. But he like falls in love with her at first sight, and so he can't kill her, and so then all the other seed bearers are coming after both of them, like 1 to kill her and 2 to like get him because he's a traitor. But the novella thing is like a prequel to the first book about Ander before he becomes a seed bearer, and like in order to do that, they have to do this journey where they like essentially get rid of everything that brings them joy. And so he is supposed to take this camping trip after he turns 18, I think, 16 or 18, and take all of his like prized possessions and essentially burn them or get rid of them somehow. And then he can be initiated into the seed bearers. And he's struggling to do that. Like, he's on the camping trip, but he's just struggling to get rid of all of the stuff that he loves. And the worst part about it, like, this one part is so bad it made me laugh. Like, I FaceTimed my stepsister, who has also read this duology, and I was telling her about it, and we were crying. We were laughing so hard at how horrible this part was. Essentially what happens is Ander brings his dog with him on this camping trip because his dog brings him joy, obviously. And he's supposed to kill it, I guess, get rid of it somehow. And what he does instead of killing it is essentially he uses his powers to pick the dog up and like throw it across a forest, but like make sure it lands gently on the other side. And he had, like, on his way to the camping trip, he saw this child there, and so he just assumes that the dog is gonna be taken in by this child, I guess. It was so dumb. Like, I wish I hadn't read it, because it just kind of makes this duology seem more goofy, and like the short story was very unnecessary, and it made me mad because it's only available on Kindle, and it said it was like 64 pages long or something like that, but you have like 5 or 6 title page, you know, chapter beginning of the book pages, and then like 30 pages of this story, and then the rest of it is just the first chapter of the first book. And like, why would you be reading that prequel story if you hadn't already read this? Yeah, that's how I feel. So, with that being said, those were the 6 worst things I read this year, and honestly, like, none of them were that bad except the short story. I've had a really great reading year, honestly, and I'm really excited to tell you guys about the best books I read this year. So stay tuned for that one. That will be my next video, and I will talk to you guys then. Bye.